Namaste and good morning, everyone. I am Ritika Gupta, Assistant Director at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabha Evam Niti, Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi. Extend my heartiest welcome to you all to IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. We are here for a panel discussion on double disaster, COVID and cyclone impact and way forward. This discussion is jointly organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, in collaboration with Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development at IMPRI. I would now like to request Dr. Simi Mehta, who is CEO and Editorial Director at IMPRI, to introduce our eminent panelists further. Ma'am, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika, and a very good morning to all of you. And I sincerely hope that you, your loved ones, and everyone around you are keeping safe and you are in the best of your health. So today we have gathered for a very important and interesting discussion on double disaster, COVID and cyclone impact and way forward. And this is in the run up to the World Environment Day, which we are celebrating on the 5th. So as all of us know that India has a long coastline, say of over 7,500 kilometers, 7,500 kilometers. And as such, we are no stranger to extreme cyclones. And the month of May 2021 witnessed two devastating cyclones within a span of 15 days, Cyclone Taute in the west coast and Cyclone Yas in the east. And all this when our country was already reeling under the scourge of the devastating second wave of the coronavirus pandemic. While it is too early to tell the full impact of cyclones Taute and Yas, but going by the basic estimations, the combined losses equal to the tune of around 5 billion US dollars. Losses of human lives, large-scale infrastructure damage, power outages, rural homes and agricultural lands being the hardest hit, and basic needs such as drinking water, sanitation, and the like have also been very hard to come by. So there is no doubt that the country has scaled up the early warning systems, which we will know from our esteemed panelists today, through indigenous and also international collaborations. We have also built civic awareness, constructed cyclone shelters, strengthened buildings, and among several other measures that we have undertaken. And as such, we are witnessing quite better preparedness. However, the challenge this time is worsened by the pandemic. It has been a nightmare to ensure physical distancing in the cyclone rehabilitation facilities, where minimum space requirement is approximately 5 square meter while following the COVID-19 protocol. And in the absence of this, for the huge number of evacuees, the threat of contracting the virus becomes imminent. And hence, this double disaster needs to be objectively assessed as our country works on a war footing to tackle the health crisis, which makes it more difficult to respond to the additional healthcare needs that the cyclones have brought. So to understand the implications of the two cyclones, the science behind their intensity, and if and whether we could have been better prepared, and the lessons we can draw from the double disaster, we have gathered today for a very pertinent web policy talk, which is being jointly organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, and IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute. And we are so fortunate to have a very distinguished panel, expert panel with us today. The patron of the program is Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir, who has also kindly consented to deliver the keynote address. The convener of the program is Professor Anil Kumar Gupta. He is the head of Environment Climate Disaster Risk Management Division, NIDM. And we have with us Dr. Sreeja MU. She is Hazard Analyst, Kerala State Disaster Management Authority in the Government of Kerala. We have with us Dr. Roxy Mathew Koll. He's a climate scientist at Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology in the Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India. We have with us Mrs. Sunita Devi. She is scientist at the India Meteorological Department in the Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India. And we have with us Dr. Chandrasekhar Bahinipati, sir. He is Assistant Professor at Indian Institute of Technology, Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh. So I would now like to wish all of you good morning again. And if we can check if Bindal sir is here? Yes, Bindal sir is here. So we can have the presentation first. And welcome, Bindal sir. And I think we can go ahead with the presentation. So we have prepared a short presentation, 5 minutes. Over to you.
Has Bindal sir joined?
Yes, it looks like. Bindal sir, can you hear us?
Yes, now we can see him.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Professor Anil Gupta.
Good morning, sir.
I'm sorry for joining late, but
no, it's all right, sir.
Planning issue.
No, sir.
Good morning, sir.
You are looking quite young, sir, today. that is really good, sir.
My barber has to be complimented.
Dr. Simi is here. Dr. Simi has just given a brief background of the program. Yeah.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Simi.
Good morning, sir. So, sir, we can start with the presentation, and after the presentation, I would be inviting you for your remarks.
Okay.
To you, Mahesh.
Right, so our team will quickly present the state of the affairs so that we have an enriching discussion. Mahima will do the presentation. Mahima, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Go on, Mahima.
Good morning. We've gathered here for a hashtag web policy talk on double disaster involving COVID-19 and cyclones, impact and way forward. With this presentation, our team will give a brief insight into the topic to encourage the discussion on the intersection of the COVID-19 outbreak and cyclones that wreaked havoc during it. Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the country on Mann Ki Baat on 30th May 2021, where he noted the natural disasters that India faced and expressed appreciation towards the courage, patience, and discipline of the citizens, especially those who provided relief and rescue services. Let's direct our attention towards the talk given by Honorable Prime Minister on the 77th episode of Mann Ki Baat.
हम देख रहे हैं कि किस प्रकार से नमस्कार मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, नमस्कार। हम देख रहे हैं कि किस प्रकार से देश पूरी ताकत के साथ कोविड-19 के खिलाफ लड़ रहा है। पिछले 100 वर्षों में यह सबसे बड़ी महामारी है और इसी पैंडेमिक के बीच भारत ने अनेक प्राकृतिक आपदाओं का भी डटकर मुकाबला किया है। इस दौरान साइक्लोन अम्फान आया, साइक्लोन निसर्ग आया, अनेक राज्यों में बाढ़ आई, छोटे बड़े अनेक भूकंप आए, भूस्खलन हुए। अभी पिछले 10 दिनों में ही देश ने फिर 2 बड़े साइक्लोन का सामना किया। पश्चिमी तट पर साइक्लोन ताउते और पूर्वी कोस्ट पर साइक्लोन यास। इन दोनों चक्रवातों ने कई राज्यों को प्रभावित किया है। देश और देश की जनता इनसे पूरी ताकत से लड़ी और कम से कम जानहानि सुनिश्चित। हम अभी अनुभव करते हैं कि पहले के वर्षों की तुलना में ज्यादा से ज्यादा लोगों की जान बचा पा रहे हैं। विपदा के इस कठिन और असाधारण परिस्थिति में साइक्लोन से प्रभावित हुए सभी राज्यों के लोगों ने जिस प्रकार से साहस का परिचय दिया है, इस संकट की घड़ी में बड़े धैर्य के साथ, अनुशासन के साथ मुकाबला किया है। मैं आदरपूर्वक, हृदयपूर्वक सभी नागरिकों की सराहना करना चाहता हूँ, जिन लोगों ने आगे बढ़ राहत और बचाव के कार्य में हिस्सा लिया। ऐसे सभी लोगों की जितनी सराहना करें उतनी कम है। मैं उन सबको सैल्यूट करता हूँ। केंद्र, राज्य सरकारें और स्थानीय प्रशासन सभी एक साथ मिलकर इस आपदा का सामना करने में जुटे हुए हैं। मैं उन सभी लोगों के प्रति अपनी संवेदना व्यक्त करता हूं जिन्होंने अपने करीबियों को खोया। हम सभी इस मुश्किल घड़ी में उन लोगों के साथ मजबूती से खड़े हैं जिन्होंने इस आपदा का नुकसान झेला। मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, चुनौती कितनी ही बड़ी, भारत का विजय का संकल्प भी हमेशा उतना ही बड़ा रहा। देश की सामूहिक शक्ति और हमारे सेवा भाव देश को हर तूफान से बाहर निकाला। हाल के दिनों में हमने देखा है कैसे हमारे डॉक्टर्स, नर्सेस और फ्रंटलाइन वॉरियर्स उन्होंने खुद की चिंता छोड़कर दिन रात काम किया और आज भी।
Keeping in line with this, here is a brief introduction to the cyclones that hit India in 2021. Starting as a disturbance in the Arabian Sea, Cyclone Taute intensified and moved northwards on the west coast of India, along the states of Kerala, Karnataka, Goa, and Maharashtra, before reaching Gujarat and Daman and Diu on May 17th, where it made landfall. In addition to the relief services, isolated testing facilities had to be set up, keeping in mind the pandemic. Just after 10 days, a disturbance in the Bay of Bengal formed into the cyclone Yas and moved inland to hit Odisha and West Bengal. The health ministry worked towards ensuring a smooth supply of vaccines and COVID treatment. Both the cyclones brought heavy rainfalls and wind, which damaged houses, crops, electricity poles, boats, uprooted residents and trees, and disrupted traffic and airline functioning. A review meeting was held with the Prime Minister and Chief Ministers of the affected states to formulate long-term solutions to the problem. Keeping in mind that many researchers believe that the destruction of biodiversity creates conditions for new viruses, is this nature's way of telling us to slow down? We pray for the safety and health of the people affected. With this, we look forward to learning more from our distinguished panelists. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Mahima. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and also for reminding all of us about our Honorable Prime Minister's Man Ki Baat. So thank you so much. Now I would, before inviting Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal sir for his keynote address, I would like to introduce him to you. Major General Bindal is the Executive Director of National Institute of Disaster Management. He was commissioned into the Corps of Army Air Defense in December 1985. He is an alumnus of the National Defense Academy, and he is a graduate of the Defense Services Staff College and has attended the prestigious Higher Command course at the Army War College, besides excelling in all other career courses in the Army. During his more than 3 decades of service, he has held important command and staff assignments. He has held all echelons of command within the Air Defense Regiment in diverse theaters. For example, he has commanded an Air Defense Regiment and an Air Defense Brigade in the Kashmir region against the backdrop of counter-insurgency operations. He was the General Officer commanding of the sensitive sub-area in the Northeast. He has been on the staff of a mountain brigade deployed in the counter-insurgency operations in high-altitude area, an armored division deployed in the plains, a desert corps, and in the corps headquarters in high-altitude areas. Major General Bindal has served as the Provost Marshal in the United Nations mission in Mozambique, where he was deeply involved in the liquidation of the mission. Sir has been the director of the Center for United Nations Peacekeeping, New Delhi. And for 3 years, he was also the secretary of the International Association of Peacekeeping Training Centers. Sir, we are so grateful that we are able to have you this morning, and welcome, and over to you for your keynote address, sir. Thank you so much. So please unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Simi, for the introduction. And it was a good presentation taken by Mahima Kapoor in a very concise format. And she took us through the journey of various cyclones which have hit during the COVID time. COVID-19 pandemic as it is has extended the whole disaster management setup, has extended every government agency to its maximum, to work at its peak, for not for a short duration, which we are generally used to in spurts, but for a continued period of months altogether. And then there's a small lull, and again it starts off. And on top of that, we have cyclones coming in, and so many of them which were shown by Mahima Kapoor, like Nisar, Gyas, and then Tokte, Amphan, which have caused devastation and which has further extended the capacity of every stakeholder, of every response mechanism that we have, whether it be NDRF, SDRF, or the defense forces, or the CPOs, or the civil defense, or the NGOs and the IGOs. So it has given us many lessons, and such cascading disasters will keep coming. It has also given us an indication that we should be prepared for a multi-hazard scenario rather than a single hazard scenario, which we have been doing throughout. So multi-hazard scenario we have to think of. And a lot of issues came up during this whole exercise in various, while dealing with disaster within a disaster, while fighting another major disaster. So I'll just touch upon a few of them and discuss about them. And in the panel, I'm sure the panelists, they're all esteemed people. They will be clearing our minds, and they will be, we'll have a very fruitful discussion of, so that all the participants are able to go home with a very, very clear understanding. Before that, I would like to thank IMPRI for this program. In the previous program, I was supposed to be there, but due to some issues, I could not join. So I told them next time I'll positively come. So I requested Professor Anil Gupta to delay the thing by 10 minutes because I was held up somewhere. Because since I had promised, I said I will be joining. So I'm very happy to be here, and it's a good collaboration that we are looking for in future. So coming back to the topic, this part I should have said earlier, but I'm saying in between. So coming back to what I was saying, a lot of issues came up during these experiences that India is facing, or the world is facing. In many parts of the world, there is issues like it's not only cyclones, it's landslides, floods, and many other things. So first issue which came up is the last mile connectivity. When we have a cyclone related issue, there the last mile connectivity becomes very important, and it becomes the most important issue and challenging issue for everyone. How to reach each and every person who's likely to get affected by the cyclone and take him to a safe place, to a shelter. And so that was the big challenge, and a lot of studies are being done how to improve the last mile connectivity. A lot of deaths are happening because the last mile connectivity was not ensured, was not proper, and somehow someone was missed out. And connected to this is the social behavioral change that is required among the people. First is what to communicate. Second is to reach the person whom you have to communicate. Third is how to communicate so that the other person accepts it. There are many cases where people have understood the risk. People have understood that they are very, very vulnerable to it, and chances are very likely that they might become a casualty, but they are not ready to move out. They just don't want to move out. They feel safe in that particular safe environment where they have been living for centuries. So for them, since there are people in coastal areas who have never seen outside their village. Also, it's so surprising when you go to them. The maximum reach that they've gone is to the neighboring village for some marriage or something like that. But they have not seen anything beyond that. So they're so apprehensive and afraid of leaving. So that social and behavioral change is what is, I think, a very, very important factor, which is also related to last mile connectivity, that we have reached the person, but now we have to convince him to follow the instructions for his own safety. The third point that I would like to bring out is public healthcare system. We have seen that the public healthcare system is the best system that can reach out to people because it is funded by government. All interventions by government, the first intervention is through the public healthcare system, not through the private. So the confidence of the people in the public healthcare system needs to be brought up, and it needs to be brought up drastically. So the I'll say energizing, empowering, enhancing, and making the public healthcare system more reachable and more robust, and it should be continued during other times, other non-disastrous time also. We have seen in the TV how so many PHCs in various villages right next to a major town or a metro city are not there. 20 years back it was built, but there's no staff. So I think this is something which needs a total revamp, and this once it is functional, and the deployment of such public healthcare system is given a de novo look, I think it will also help out a great deal in every sort of emergency that is likely to occur, whether it be medical or any other natural hazard. Sharing of info. Sharing of info is a big issue. We have so many NGOs, so many self-help groups, so many IGOs, and so many philanthropists who are working in the field. And they have so much of data. They have so much of data. They have all the segregated data that we can ask for. So that sharing of info, there is no platform. Odisha has gone a big way in bringing them on board. Kerala has gone about it in a very, very big way. And these two states, the response to a hazard, or I'll say a disaster, is at a different level because they have ensured sharing of info. They have brought all these multi-stakeholders on board, and they're taking them along with them. And the state government is not taking them as a competitor, and they're taking them as a friend in distress. And that is the change that we need to make in our thinking also, and start involving them in our day-to-day routine. We have to also understand that they have a specific agenda. So we have to also be aware of that particular limitation of that particular group, whichever group we are talking about. If the objective is to ensure removing malnutrition among children, so it is only children they're looking at. Then we should task them, talk to them, coordinate with them accordingly, and at least that part is being looked after. So similarly, every NGO has got a different objective, and once you add up all the objectives, there's a whole picture which is complete. So I think they should be very, very much part of all our planning. Next challenge that came up, leveraging of techniques. There's no common platform, and everyone is leveraging technological advancement, IT or big data analytics, or whatever AI you call it, in their own way, and which is effective. And sometimes it is not effective. And many people don't have the wherewithal to leverage technique. They go back to the age-old system of talking on phone or getting a report and then acting on it. So leveraging of technological advancement, technological advancement in during disasters need to be researched, and there should be some common protocols where the interoperability between various groups is ensured by using similar technological advancement. And that is, I think, a need of the hour. And lastly, but very, very important, is capacity building of multi-stakeholders. We have seen that many of the people at lower functionary level in various departments are just not aware of what they are supposed to do in case such a scenario is unfolded, because a formal training on scenario building, a case study with the help of a case study tabletop exercise is not being done. That training on IRS is being done. So now NIDM has started an initiative where we will carry out IRS training, physical IRS training in every state, every district. In every state, not every district officials will be called, and a lot of states have shown their willingness, and we will conduct this exercise everywhere, so that who's supposed to do what is known, And this is to be repeated every 6 months because of the high rate of attrition within a department. And you train someone now, after 6 months, half the people have changed. And sometimes generally Murphy's law works and all the key holders would have changed, or the key stakeholders would have changed. So this capacity building of multi-stakeholders, in which the stakeholders who are not from the government, but from the civil society, from the community and other organizations are also brought on board, so that there is a connect between them, which can be used during a disaster. So that is the aim of this whole initiative which NIDM is starting. It was to start in April, but because of physical limitation on physical face-to-face programs right now, we have postponed it from July onwards. So our aim is in 6 months, we'll finish 36 states and again restart the whole cycle and keep repeating it every 6 months. So with this, I have listed out some challenges that we have seen over the, especially with respect to cyclones and COVID both going together, but it also applies to all other disasters which keep happening, like landslides, flooding, or heat wave, which is going on in some places, avalanches, whatever. It can be applied to most of them because it is an area where we need to work upon. So with this, I finish my address. Thank you so much, and over to you, Dr. Simi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your remarks. And in fact, you have just led the whole discussion rolling for the session to be really fruitful. Thank you so much. It really means a lot for all of us, and for your kind words. Thank you so much. So with this, I would now invite Professor Anil Kumar Gupta for his brief remarks. I would like to introduce Professor Gupta to all of you. Professor Gupta is the head of ECDRM in NIDM. He is a disaster management, disaster mitigation and risk management professional. And he has an expertise in institutional development and international cooperation on areas of disaster management, capacity building, training, planning, governance, risk vulnerability analysis, disaster risk reduction, policy planning, agriculture.
Dr. Simi, I think not much needed. Yeah.
Yes. So I would just also really wanted to point out that you are an expert team member of the World Meteorological Organization, and here the importance because of the program that we are having on cyclones. So this needs to be pointed out. You are a team member, expert team member of the WMO Climate Statement of South Asia Core Group member of IUCN Commission on Ecosystem Management. And thank you so much, sir, for joining us, and I welcome you to provide your remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Simi. Very good morning to all of you, and the Executive Director in IDM, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal Sahab. I was listening to his keynote speech, and I think very important points have emerged from his deliberation, that this period of COVID, which has been actually not only one disaster, but it was a period of complex emergency. Now it is almost 15 months period. And in fact, not only two cyclones, we had faced 4 cyclones total. 2 cyclones in the past year and 2 cyclones this year. If we include Amphan and Nisarga also. So, and in the same way, 2 cyclones, plus neck to neck last year also, and this year also, it was like that. And the same way, one was on East Coast and the other was on the other side. So similar kind of setting. But as the keynote speaker also referred to, that this period also witnessed a number of other disasters. And in fact, when we were in the field during the first wave lockdown, we recall that with the onset of COVID-19, in fact, the looming crisis of heat wave also started. So it was heat wave, and then it was drought, then it was forest fires also were there past year. So and then in series of industrial accidents when the unlocking period started, and so many industrial fires. This year there were a number of hospital fires also, and hospital fires, and because of the challenges with the oxygen plants and so many things. So the deaths were not only because of COVID, but deaths were compounded by various other factors during this period. And that is the reason we call this period as a period of complex disaster or complex emergency. And looking into this becomes more important because this has posed a major setback to our journey on achieving sustainable development goals. Because in achieving sustainable development goals, if we look at the agenda 1 itself, the goal number 1, that related with poverty, are related with hunger, then related with health. So these are the key goals of SDGs, which has got a very direct kind of a impact of this period, not only because of COVID, but various other disasters also. So there has been challenges to food and nutritional security. There has been challenges on livelihood, particularly in cyclone affected areas. But besides this, it has the structural damage. COVID did not cause the structural damage, but cyclone contributed to structural damage. So then it became both kind of damages, non-structural and structural both. And then compounded impact on people's health, livelihood. These things were also kind of a very important aspect to understand. And then the last thing that I would like to point out here is that it has also contributed to future disaster risk. That is very important, because any kind of natural events we cannot prevent. Natural process are the natural factors, but these natural factors become disaster because of the vulnerability. So whatever disasters we faced during this period, and particularly cyclones, 4 cyclones, they were the major contributor to the coastal areas, and also the nearby areas, not only coastal, but the nearby areas also, including infrastructures. And that has created additional layers of vulnerability. So that is very important aspect to now consider, that how the disaster recovery in these cyclone context would be very, very useful for future disaster resilience also. So when we say post-COVID recovery, then at the same time we have to talk about the post-cyclone recovery also. So how this combined process of the kind of a composite understanding of recovery should take place. So I think these are very important points, and I'm very happy that Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal Saab has given this keynote address, giving us very important guidelines. And I'm very happy to see the learned expert panel today. Most of the experts are personally known to me, and we had the opportunity to work together in the past also. In fact, I recall with Dr. Bahinipati, we recently organized a program also jointly with IIT Tirupati, and he is well known to me for quite a long time. And I recall Sreeja was there in the first inaugural event of our South Campus, an IDM South Campus. The inaugural event was there, and she was one of the participants there. So I'm very happy and very eager to listen to the experts of the day. Over to you, Dr. Simi.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your inaugural remarks. And now I would like to move into the panel discussion. And I would like to introduce Mrs. Sunita Devi S. As the first panelist. She is a scientist F at the India Meteorological Department in the Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India. She works as an operational meteorologist and cyclone forecaster. She oversees all the operational forecasting. She is also responsible for the coordination related aspects pertaining to cyclonic storms and depressions forming over the North Indian Ocean and affecting the WMO SCAP panel member countries. And she also carries out duties related to capacity building for operational weather forecasters by imparting classroom trainings to fellow forecasters of IMD. And she also serves as a member of Services Commission Standing Committee on Disaster Risk Reduction and Public Services, early warning system under the WMO. So thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. And we are so grateful that you could join us this morning. Over to you, Sunita, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Simi. I'm starting to share my screen, and I presume 10 minutes I need to complete my presentation.
Yes, 10 minutes is fair enough. And
yeah,
if you could also turn on your video, and up to you.
Okay, so here most of the discussion on this COVID era cyclones, that is what cyclones occurred over the North Indian Ocean during 2020 and 2021. Even towards the end of 2019, we witnessed cyclones, but 2020 cyclones season started with super cyclone Amphan. So how we started this, just 1 second. Yeah. How the forecast was given, disseminated, then how the management coordination activities took place. So just before going into that detail, let us have a look at, even before the COVID, it means cyclones were there all along. We do witness cyclones over both Bay of Bengal Basin and Arabian Sea quite often, and the frequency is 5 per year. So similarly, we are witnessing even now. And more details I'm not going into, but one point here I just wanted to raise is that there had been a frequency of formation of cyclones more over the Bay of Bengal and less number over the Arabian Sea, somewhat in the ratio 4:1. When 4 cyclones form over the Bay of Bengal, only one will be getting genesis over the Arabian Sea. However, of late we are witnessing somewhat higher frequency of cyclones over the Arabian Sea as well, mainly attributed to the fact that due to the warming, this frequency is increasing. And at the same time, you can see here, whatever cyclones forming over the Arabian Sea, they have a natural tendency to move in a west-northwestward direction, so that either they will be weakening over the sea itself, not impacting any major land area, or most often it might be crossing Oman coast or to the south, Yemen coast, like this. This factor also now of late, during these past 2 years especially, we have seen a change, that is 2 cyclones were like the severe cyclone Nisarga formed in 2020, and the cyclone Toti formed last week over the Arabian Sea. Both influenced, both had made landfall along the west coast. So this was another major impact, major part I did. And here already it is stated how a multi-hazard cyclone is the very best example of a multi-hazard scenario. Cyclones will be generating storm surge, then strong winds, gale force winds, and lot of torrential rainfall. This will have cascading impacts on their own, influencing giving a prolonged and long-standing socio-economic impact on the lives and livelihood of our coastal population. In terms of loss of life, injuries it creates, structural damage it creates, all these will have a prolonged impact on our social life, societal aspects, and economic as well. So this is the major part of the cyclonic storm and how we are managing mainly. Now we have a well set plan for early warning system. So India Meteorological Department is the agency, national agency for providing the warning, and we do monitor the system, and we issue warnings at least 2 weeks in advance nowadays, warning about the genesis, where the genesis is likely to happen, whether it is going to intensify into a cyclonic storm. At least that much we are able to tell at least two weeks in advance nearly. And then there will be, as the system, we are approaching the period, within the 5 days time span, we will be issuing the forecast based on our accurate, more and more focused forecast we will be generating. And this will be specific, understandable, easy to understand format we'll be presenting to the users. This morning's thus generated will be disseminated to all concerned. And Bindal sir was talking about the last mile connectivity also. We are trying to ensure the last mile connectivity at the most possible manner. That also we'll discuss. So here, coordination with emergency response units also plays a part of the part from the forecaster. Role of the forecaster is there, and there will be post-event review. There will be pre-cyclone exercises conducted. Then public education and outreach activities also will be there as part of the early warning system. So here what we are seeing, apart from the 4 cyclones which came into often referenced by the 2 prior speakers prior to me, there had been 2 more systems during the COVID time only, towards the peak of the first wave of COVID. After the lockdown, these 2 cyclones happened, which affected mainly Tamil Nadu and some parts of Andhra Pradesh. One was the very severe cyclone storm Nivar, formed in the month of November, whose track is shown here. How the NDRF battalions are aligning themselves in Tamil Nadu is shown here. 4 different battalions in 4 strategic locations. They are planning their activities here. So Nivar and Burevi, they were the 2 other cyclones which affected during this pandemic. So there had been total 6 cyclones we witnessed. This is how the Amphan cyclone tracked by Paradip radar. Cyclone Nisarga, it was a severe cyclone which made landfall close to Alibag during the month of June. 3rd June, it made landfall last year. Similarly, at the same time, so these tracks, how predicted, I'm not going to into much details. It was well predicted, that's known to all, and the precautionary measures, even though there had been Amphan was, the period of Amphan was falling in the major period of the lockdown period for beginning of the disaster, COVID disaster. That time it happened, and even then there had been proper evacuation activities taking place, and also the actually following properly the COVID protocol. Mainly the activities were taking place, but there had been later on instances that the rescue actors getting affected by COVID. That type of situation also we had to face during the Amphan time. This is the track of Nisarga, the accuracy I'm showing here. These are the 2 cyclones in the last, just we completed. That is, this is an extremely, Toti had been an extremely severe cyclone. It impacted mainly when the genesis area had been somewhere close to Lakshadweep Islands. Lakshadweep was impacted, then Kerala. Coming further to the north, Karnataka, there had been torrential rainfall over all these states, along with some substantial strong winds causing damage. Then further it moved on, influenced, even though it did not make landfall over Maharashtra, but the proximity of the system caused a lot of damage to Maharashtra as well. And here the other tragedy over the offshore activity that also happened. The sinking of the barge happened over here, claiming several lives. Then it made landfall over Gujarat. Then came a week later came the very severe cyclone Yas. So this formed over the Bay of Bengal and made landfall over Odisha coast. Here, the system affected initially Andaman Nicobar Islands as well during its genesis period. Further, when it moved along the east central part of Bay of Bengal and made landfall over Odisha coast, close to Balasore. That time, after the landfall, it had affected the states like Odisha, then West Bengal. These 2 were the states majorly affected. Further, moving inland, it had affected Jharkhand as well. So Jharkhand and Bihar also some damages encountered. out of the system. And from Toti, what happened, actually after landfall also system maintained the intensity of a cyclonic storm for some 12 hours further, and it had a movement northeastwards, causing rainfall all along its path. Some strong winds also, thereby creating damage to the standing crops over these regions, including Gujarat. Several mango orchards suffered a lot of damage. Further into Rajasthan, also there had been some standing crop damages and some other damages. So like this, these two systems happened during May 2021. These are the tracks. Just to have a look at, I'm showing here how extremely severe cyclone Tote moved and how the very severe cyclone Yas moved. And between these two cyclones, there had been some difference in the sense that while Tote was strong in terms of wind, it caused. There had been the damage associated with the winds had been quite large, but as far as Yas is concerned, there had been lot of rainfall. These are the rainfall amounts shown here on day by day. That is on the prior day of landfall, some 28 centimeter rainfall had been reported by Chandbali in Bhadrak district in Odisha. Rainfall continued even after landfall for one more day. So there had been extremely heavy rainfall, and out of which there had, despite on this full moon day also coincided with this, so the storm tide was slightly aggravated, creating damage to West Bengal, a few of the districts, East Medinipur, like districts in West Bengal as well. And wind speed also associated with the Yas, if we can see, we have high wind speed recorders all along the coast, both east and west coast, and high wind speed recorder situated at Balasore reported 183 km/h wind speed at the time, somewhat around the time of landfall, just prior to the time of landfall. Some of the damage pictures are shown here. No need to spend much time in this. And regarding the warning dissemination part, we are making use of at present whatever available technology, including social media platforms, which serve as a very good handy tool for dissemination. So there are mobile apps developed for the purpose. So all these available means are made use of, along with the common alert protocol developed by NDMA, the GMAS developed by World Meteorological Organization. All these are made use of for dissemination, warning dissemination, and our last mile connectivity assurance for the deep sea area, that is still a concern, but via Gagan and Navik, that also is being attempted to resolve. So here about the reliability of the forecast of the National Met Agency, I'm just showing here a few of the slides. This is quite important to note that we have achieved a remarkable accuracy in terms of landfall prediction, intensity prediction. Landfall prediction is of the order of some error. If the average error had been 72 kilometer. So almost in a near pinpointed manner, we are able to forecast. This is quite important in the COVID type of pandemic period, since the evacuation will be taking a lot of, we need to extend a lot of struggle in evacuating people. The more number of people getting evacuated, to accommodate them, we don't have that much infrastructure developed. We have a certain number of fixed number of cyclone shelters, but the pandemic was not in our view. So the number of people get evacuated, that there is certain limitation in order to keep the social distancing part, bring out the social distancing part. Hence, the narrower the uncertainty with which we are giving the forecast, the better it is. That much area of the evacuation we can avoid. That unnecessary evacuation we can avoid by that means. So this is the landfall errors, and here the intensity errors and landfall point forecast errors are shown here. And So that is here why I am showing the error statistics is because of the fact that the users should believe in this forecast, believe in the forecast of issued by IMD, and not to go with the rumors or any half-cooked information which is made available very easily via social media platforms, blogs, etc. People will tend to give wrong information. That also will be adding to our mismanagement. In the difficult situation, managing the cyclone is a very difficult in this pandemic period. At the same time, if rumors are adding to it, then it will become quite unhandy, very difficult to manage. So that is why not to believe any rumors, believe in the national agency who is capable of giving the forecast. That's why I showed this. And our responsibility anyway, it is already known to all. So I am not reiterating this. So the entire North Indian Ocean part, we are giving the forecast. And so here, this short range forecast, it is based upon dynamic statistical guidance as well as various numerical models. Numerical models are run by the organizations under the Ministry of Earth Sciences at IMD, National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, located in Noida, and in Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, located at Pune. Along with this, INCOIS, Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, also provide the storm surge forecasts for the purpose of cyclone warning. So all these are utilized to its maximum efficiency, and this added with the forecaster's expertise, we are providing this forecast. So the various bulletins will be designed and generated. These are the color code of 4 warnings. In agreement with NDMA, this is taken into, and we are now displaying the track on a GIS platform for making it easier for the users to understand which are all the districts going to get affected. All these things are made available on a GIS platform, interactive GIS-based platform. And impact-based forecast, earlier we used to do on the basis of past disaster, past impacts which occurred in association with the cyclone. But however, now we are switching over to dynamic impact-based forecast with the help of a project taken up by NDMA in collaboration with IMD. So here they have developed a tool, dynamic tool called WebDCR, a web-based dynamic composite risk atlas decision support system tool for assessing the impact. So if as and when IMD predicts the track of the system, this tool, this track will be fed into this tool. This tool will have in its inbuilt means all data, 2011 census data is fed into this, and infrastructure which are available, all are fed into this. So this data is available. This model will be running and providing the probable impact scenario, generating the impact scenario. This will be aiding the disaster managers in turn to plan for this particular impending disaster. So this is the just to conclude what we are planning. In future we need to look into further into improving the forecast in terms of physics, dynamics. First of all, our observational capability will be enhancing still further, and so there is scope of improvement in forecast skill with all these type of activities. And dissemination part, we'll have to achieve the last mile connectivity through this Gagan and Navik into deep sea fishermen, and anyway for shipping operations, we are able to be in touch with them via Inmarsat satellite. Then there is common alert protocol for dissemination as well. And anyway, we are continuously striving for further improving the all these activities. That's all for to begin with. Further discussion can take place. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunita ma'am. Very interesting and very insightful presentation. Thank you so much. We'll move to Dr. Roxy Mathew Koll as the next panelist. Dr. Koll is a climate scientist at Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology at the Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India. He is currently leading research on climate change, how it extends to the rapid warming in the Indian Ocean and impacts the global rainfall pattern, the monsoon and the marine ecosystem. He is the chair of the Climate and Ocean Variability, Predictability and Change, the CLIVAR Indian Ocean Region Panel, and a lead author of the IPCC reports. Dr. Roxy is among the list of top 2% scientists ranked by the Stanford University. Thank you, sir. It's a privilege for us to have you. You may please begin your presentation.
Thanks, Simi, and thanks to NIDM and IMPRI for inviting me to this very important talk where COVID and cyclones collide. And I am quite happy that we are not only talking about the impacts, but also the way forward. Because as scientists, many of us are, I mean, we work on how the cyclones are changing, how climate change is impacting us, but it's quite important for us to work on the solutions as well, and also to look at the way forward, right? So I would like to start with the good news part, because as climate scientists, we often say, okay, the numbers are going up, the average temperatures are going up, extreme events are happening as we see almost every day, right? But the good news is, and that can be depressing, but the good news is that with improved monitoring, improved forecasting, like what Dr. Sunita was showing from IMT, and also the disaster management has worked out, has improved tremendously during the last several years and worked out perfectly, almost perfectly for the coastline of India, right? So we have brought down the number of deaths from cyclone. If you look at the 1999 Odisha cyclone, this was more than 2 decades back. I was doing my undergrads in college, and that time I couldn't fathom the impact of that kind of a cyclone, but tens of thousands of people died as per official numbers, and maybe several thousands more. And from that 5-digit number, we have come down to numbers where the number of deaths due to cyclones are like 2 digits or maximum 3 digits during a cyclone, and that too probably cases like Cyclone Tote where the warning was not heeded, right? So the improvement in terms of forecasting, monitoring, and disaster management has been quite good. And another good news is that we have the data and we have the science to prevent the disaster that is going to happen, not to prevent, but bring down the number of deaths and loss to property in the coming years as well. So that is the good news, right? And but if you talk about climate change, there are several more challenges that are coming up in terms of cyclones as well, in terms of extreme weather events over India. And that's what I would like to talk about here. And that's where it is quite important that we share data and technology, like the Major General Bindal was talking in the start about sharing data and technologies between different departments. So that is quite important. And I will also talk about converged events where multiple extremes work together in a climate change scenario. And that's what Professor Anil was talking about in one of his starting discussion, right? So COVID and climate change, if you look at the curves, we know that, or we hope, we are expecting that COVID is working on different waves, and with proper action, we can flatten the curve and bring down the number of COVID cases. But if you look at climate change, this is not a curve that will come down in our lifetime or in our children's lifetime or even our grandchildren's lifetime. The maximum we can do is to flatten that curve or to stop it from accelerating further. I would like to show that, give a visualization of that scenario. Let me just share my screen. I guess you can see.
Yes, it is visible.
Climate change, and on the y-axis you have the number of deaths, and on the x-axis you have the time, and the time is in months or years or centuries in terms of climate change. So maybe COVID might peak, or we have already seen several peaks, 2 peaks, and maybe the third wave is coming as well. Maybe the third wave can coincide with the cyclones in the next year. We don't know, or in the post-monsoon season, as we have 6 months more time. And with corrective action, we can bring down that curve and flatten and bring down the number of cases. But if you look at climate change, we are on that upward slope. And this will go on for several years because us nations are unable to curb carbon emissions, right? And what is the property of climate change or greenhouse gases? Their lifetime is so long, particularly of carbon dioxide, which means that the carbon dioxide we emit now will remain there for hundreds of years. So suppose if we stop all the carbon dioxide emissions today, stopping industries, cars, everything at all, we will still see the carbon dioxide staying there in the atmosphere. Even I am 40 years old, yeah, and it will take 40 plus more years for at least half of that carbon dioxide to mix in the atmosphere and dissipate from there, yeah. And it will take much more time, hundreds of years, centuries, to bring that down to 20%, which means that the impacts are going to stay there, and we need to be prepared. And that's the preparedness we are talking about here, right? Let me stop this share. Yeah, perfect. So, and in terms of climate change, where are we? If you look at the global mean temperatures during the last few decades, we see that we have reached a 1.2 degrees Celsius, and WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, is telling that we will reach that 1.5 degree threshold in the next few years. So should we be concerned? Is 1.5 a magical number that we suddenly we see so many extremes and cyclones coming out, popping out, especially in the tropical regions and all? It is not a magical number. We are already on that curve reaching up to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we are already feeling the impact in India on our doorsteps. So if you ask, or if you assess the climate change impact on anyone who was born beyond the year 2000, every single day in the temperatures we see the impact of climate change. So the generation Z that we talk about has not seen a single day of their life without the impact of climate change, yeah. And this is particularly important for India, where most of these climate change impacts are coming through the oceans. And why is that? Because more than 93% of the heat from additional heat from climate change is being absorbed by the oceans, which is why, even though we are talking about the impacts on the land in terms of cyclones, we need to have some focus on what is happening over the oceans, yeah. And this heat is being thrown back to us in the form of cyclones, extreme heavy rainfall events, and all. So our research shows clearly that the number of cyclones, the intensity of cyclones, so the number and the intensity of cyclones have increased significantly, particularly over the Arabian Sea region, where the ocean warming is one of the rapidest or the fastest. Yeah, and it's not just the number and intensity of these cyclones, but cyclones are also intensifying rapidly. If you take the case of Cyclone Tote intensified from a weak cyclone, let us call it maybe at 100 km/h speed, for imagining the exact numbers Sunita may tell. And it intensified from a weak cyclone to an extremely severe cyclone, almost reaching between 180 km/h to 220 km/h based on some estimates. And that happened in less than 24 hours. So this is a challenge. So even though forecast has improved in terms of track, landfall, time, everything, we still have challenges in terms of forecasting this rapid intensification of cyclone, right? So we are expecting that the cyclone will intensify in maybe in the next 1 or 2 or 3 days, but if it is intensifying in 1 day, that gives a challenge not only to the forecasters, but also to the disaster management team and the public and common man at ground. Because when we are going to sleep, it is a weak cyclone, and when we wake up to a strong cyclone on our doorsteps. So that is the kind of challenge, despite the improvements, the good news that I talked about, that we need to be prepared for. And so far we talked about how cyclones are changing, but there is an important factor, underlying factor, again because of climate change, and that is where multiple extremes overlap. Yeah. So when Cyclone Tote came, we saw, Sunita showed clearly how it started from Lakshadweep, Union Territory of India, then came very close to the west coast of Kerala. She missed the state Goa, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and then Gujarat, right? All the entire west coast. So as the number of cyclones increase in the Arabian Sea, one thing is that even though many tracks might be towards the northwest, towards Oman and all, the chances of many of them coming too close to west coast of India is much more, and this is going to increase much more in the future. So when these cyclones come very close to the land, they drive strong waves of storm surges. We call them storm surges, pushing water inland, right? And on top of that, this water which is flooding the coastland, we have heavy rains also. Yeah, heavy rains again flooding the same coastal region. And on top of that, we have a background rising sea level. So there are these three factors, and in the Indian Ocean, sea level is also rising fast, even though it's a gradual thing. Now, this played very clearly in terms of the recent two cyclones. Cyclone Tote Sreeja was saying, Cyclone Tote, the impact was more in terms of the winds. But if you look at cyclone, yes, on the east coast, yeah, it was not as strong as Cyclone Tote. In fact, it was maybe in terms of wind speed, it was half the wind speed. So it was a moderate cyclone, but the impact in terms of flooding was quite larger over the east coast in Odisha, Bangladesh, and Bengal side as well. And one of the reasons is the sea level there is sea level increase is much higher. That is one of the northern Bay of Bengal is one of the regions where the sea level rise is the maximum. Yeah, and these events coincided with a high tide. So that is a multiplier again, threat multiplier. Yeah. And we have several departments like when we are talking about floods, the data and the monitoring is handled by different departments. IMD has some measurements of wind speed, rainfall and all, but when it comes to floods and all, maybe it's the water department and the local administration in terms of other things. So we need to work on all these aspects together. And also we don't have proper forecasts that integrate all these aspects of compound events. So we are unable to say how much of a flood we will have from these cyclones exactly, right? So that is the future we have to prepare for, because future, as I said, this climate change peak, it is yet to peak. Maybe it will peak when I am old, when I am 80 years old. And as we saw in terms of COVID, it is the elderly that is most affected, right? It is the elderly that is most affected when COVID is on peak. And similarly, we might be the most affected when climate change is on its peak. And another factor we have to consider when talking about coastline, and do I have 2 more minutes? I just need 2 more minutes.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So another thing to account is, many times we account for weather, disasters, everything. But another thing to account for future is the population. Yeah. And the coastal population is going to tremendously increase. Today, Mumbai's population is, I'm giving an example, is around 21 million. Yeah. In 2050, Mumbai's population will be how much? 42 million, double numbers, 21 to 42 million. So that is the vulnerability. So when population plays with all this, the vulnerability and the risk is multiplied several times. So we need to consider all these aspects when we are working for the future, and that includes sharing data between different departments. And the first step we need to do is, we need to take this available data, but also open up data sharing. But the first step is, we need to do a risk assessment for all those regions, especially for cyclones. We need to do a coastal risk assessment for the East Coast and West Coast. I think some kind of risk assessment has been done for the East Coast, but that is only considering the cyclone impact, but not these overlapping elements, and probably not with the population considered in. And we need to, based on this coastal risk assessment, we can take appropriate steps forward in terms of what measures we have to take in the future. We can have natural defenses in place. So I have been talking about how mangroves used to work excellently for the West Coast and East Coast. Even we saw that working out in Sundarbans last year. So they have a nice way of reducing the impact of strong winds, and again they will regenerate the next year. Yeah. So the West Coast, like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, all these had mangroves and floodplains which have been degraded and lost completely. And if that was there, some of the biodiversity that we lost in, like in Gujarat, so many birds killed, so many, I think the lions were also affected in the Gir forest, we could have saved them. So that we need to work on that coastal risk assessment and have both natural and artificial defenses. And maybe we might need to rehabilitate these people also from very high risk regions near to the coast. We need early warning systems in place which include all these aspects, overlapping aspects, and we need women empowerment also. So I'm happy that there are women in this panel discussing both on the climate aspects and the disaster management aspects. So one thing, INCO is the center at Hyderabad on ocean observations. What their one of their reports shown is that women are more aware of the disasters, especially when we talk about fisher folks. When the fishermen go out into the sea, the women are able to look into the forecasts and warnings and monitoring the numbers and alert their people in the sea on when cyclones are expected or heavy rains and winds are expected. So there are many ways we can work together, and if you have that in place, if you have that future plan in place, we can have a resilient coastline, we can have a resilient India. Yeah, that is the message I have to say, and we can talk more as this discussion unravels. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent, sir. Thank you so much for clearly explaining and in very simple terms, but very difficult concepts also on the overlapping elements of so many natural disasters. So really thankful to you. So now I would like to move on to Dr. Sreeja Unni, and just to briefly introduce to you, she is hazard analyst with the Kerala State Disaster Management Authority, and she has coordinated emergency operations including COVID-19 response, Kerala flood 2018-19, etc., from Emergency Operations Center, disaster risk reduction activities such as school safety program, hospital safety program, etc. Dr. Sreeja has also worked with the Maharashtra State Disaster Management Authority, also with the District Disaster Management Authority in Thane district, and was also responsible for the preparation of the Thane District Disaster Management Plan. And she was also involved in the Tata Institute of Social Sciences project on Nepal earthquake relief, and conducted rapid need assessment for the survivors of the Dhading district of Nepal by identifying vulnerable population such as widows, differently abled people. So thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Over to you.
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Please do.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope Anil sir is there, sir, and all the other panelists. And thank you, NIDM and IMPRI, sorry, for giving me this platform. So I would like to, because I'm a disaster management professional, I would like to analyze it in a disaster management point of view. So coming to the biological disasters, I think I have only 10 minutes, right? So the initial parts I will just rush. So biological disasters, NIDM is the first organization in India. In 2008 itself, NIDM has given a guidelines for managing biological disasters. And they have given a clear guidelines on what is a biological disaster. And in that also, a pandemic, a brief note about pandemic was also given. So it was quite surprising after so many years, and pandemic is actually happening, and most of the things which is mentioned in the guidelines of biological disasters, we currently use it. So yeah, so coming to the severe acute respiratory syndrome, that is SARS-CoV-2, it was, we all know it originated in China and in 2019, and later in India, it was first diagnosed in Kerala on 30th January 2020. And that is the day in which WHO declared COVID as a public health emergency of international concern, and later they declared it as a pandemic. So coming to the management part of the COVID, the control measures were done, that is lockdowns, travel restrictions were there. Lockdown which happened in 3 phases on a total span of around 68 days. 68 days, the lockdown was there, and it affected everyone's life, we all know. Coming to the stakeholder coordination, usually we always think that a biological disaster is more of a work of a health department. But coming to the pandemic, this is the first situation in which all the other departments, including labor department or civil supplies department or the transportation department was having a huge role in managing this biological disaster. Coming to the again regarding the second disaster, that is the cyclone. In the last 1 year, in the Arabian Ocean and Arabian Sea and in the Bay of Bengal, like in the Indian Ocean, from Kerala, we have faced around 4 cyclones, but actually around 5 cyclones happened in North Indian Ocean, and 4 depressions or depressions happened in last year. And in this year, in 2021, just 1 year of this cyclone phase, already 2 cyclones happened. Already ma'am mentioned about it, so I'm not going into it. Coming to the multiple disasters or cascading disasters, usually it will be like 2 disasters happening or 2 hazards happening in a linear phase, that is a COVID and an industrial accident or COVID or a cyclone happening simultaneously. But when these 2 disasters happen simultaneously, its cascading impact is huge. And the primary disaster, that is the COVID, and the second one, that is the cyclone, it can lead to other complex vulnerabilities also, such as if there is critical infrastructure failure, it could escalate to very complex emergencies, such as if there is oxygen shortage in hospitals and such other emergencies it could lead to. So multiple disasters and overlapping disasters, it can have very cascading effects on the population. Coming to the risk drivers, we all know the vulnerabilities, different vulnerabilities of disasters. That is we all know about the poverty, inequality, even especially when we consider about the fishermen community, who are the most vulnerable population of cyclone. They will be they are living along the coastal line, so definitely their livelihood, their life is impacted, are at risk during a cyclone. But it also impacts like their life is always also at stake during normal COVID time also, because COVID it usually increases, the cases increases if the density of the population is more. So usually the fishermen folks, due to various reasons, they will be densely populated, they'll be living in densely populated area. So definitely these are risk drivers, both for the cyclones as well as for the COVID cases. Climate change, already sir has mentioned about it. Unsustainable development, improper use of land, land use, that have a very serious impact on, have a very big risk element on the cyclones. Then I have already mentioned about the population density, inadequate healthcare system. Already the healthcare system in India, we all know there are not sufficient beds for the patients, for the population. There are not sufficient doctors or other supporting staffs. With the new rising COVID situations or other disasters, the healthcare system are at their surge capacity. They are at their maximum capacity. And if there is a cascading disaster or multiple disasters happening, the total healthcare system could collapse. So that is one thing, one of the major risk drivers in case of for cyclone and COVID. Also, when it comes to multiple hazards, we can think about the inadequate preparedness. In 2020, last year, Kerala State Disaster Management Authority have prepared an orange book, which is a guidance book which for every stakeholder departments for managing monsoon or cyclone related if there is any emergency need. But even though it was there that initially we had this 4 types of camps in which the people could be accommodated if they have to be shifted from their houses. First one was for the general public. The second one was for I mean, the elderly people who are more vulnerable to COVID situations. So the second type of camp was for the elderly population. Then the third type of camp was for the people who were at quarantine, but who are not diagnosed or who are not having any kind of symptoms. And the fourth type of camps were for people who are having COVID symptoms, but are not tested positive. So these four types of camps we have established, and we collected data, but later we understood that we didn't get enough time to train, or the people who are at the ground who actually have to do the work, they were not sufficiently trained to carry out it in the same manner. So all this, even though the preparedness are happening at a state level, it may not penetrate to a deeper level. So that is the thing I want to show in the inadequate preparedness thing. Then the lack of capacity building and training initiatives, usually before the monsoon or before the cyclone seasons, there will be a capacity building or training activities which will be happening at district level or state level. But due to various reasons, including COVID, because last year it was mostly locked down, and every department officials were busy with those things. So proper capacity building and training activities were not done. Couldn't be done. It is. I'm not saying talking about Kerala alone, but that was the situation in most part of the country. Then the burnout of the frontline workers. The frontline workers, which are who are working since the even before diagnosing COVID. That is when COVID cases were reported in China in the beginning of January. Yes, in the beginning of January. That time itself, the Kerala State Disaster Management Authority and also the Health Department were actively checking for patients, people who are coming from China. And we're testing them actively. So that is why on 30th, the very first case could be identified and could be isolated and treated. But since then, that is from the January, the frontline workers are continuously working. And it's like a tremendous work. Not only the health department, I'm not talking only about the health department, but also the police, the fire and safety officials, or the revenue staff, labor department, the migrant labor movement, laborers were moving from from Kerala or from metro cities also. They were moving back to the rural areas. So all the frontline workers were working tirelessly, and and most of them, what happens is that by the time an emergency, such a phase comes, most of them were burned out. And also there was stigma associated. I'm not very sure about how much it is there, because last year we had a aircraft accident, and the people who are the victims were saved by people who were living nearby the airport. So I'm not saying that always there's stigma associated with rescue activity, but still we always have this doubt that whether the victims are COVID positive, whether we can save them without the PPE kit. So all these kinds of fear are still there with all of us. So, and coming to the impact of these double disasters, physical impact, we all know I'm talking about mostly about the cyclones and how it is impacting along with COVID, it is impacting. So regarding the physical impact, there are around 10% of the hospitals in India are in flood-prone areas. So if there is a storm surge or if there is a heavy flooding, these hospitals need to be evacuated, and it's not a very easy task, especially when the patients are in ventilator or they need oxygen supply. So that is a very that physical impact or that vulnerability or that risk element is very huge. And regarding other physical impacts includes the disruption of the roads or bridges due to cyclones. If there is a disruption in the roads, definitely the transportation of the patients and also transportation of essential food items or PPE kits or everything will be disrupted due to these physical impacts. I'm not taking too much time because I think, can I talk for some more time? Like
yes, please. Yes, fine.
Socially, coming to the social impact, the first and foremost people who are affected due to cyclone are fishermen community. But they are not really, their livelihood are lost, their life is at stake because sometimes these fishermen will go into the sea for around 10 days and we may not be able to communicate with them regarding if there is a warning coming in, the state level authorities or district level authorities may not be able to communicate to all the fishermen folks out there. So that is one major problem and they will be impacted severely. And migrant laborers also. We have seen what happened during the first lockdown, where people from the metro cities were migrating back to their rural areas. From Kerala itself, around 2 lakh people traveled from Kerala. Once the unlock started, they migrated back to moved back to their native places. So that was one of the major like their movement and the way it disrupts their social system. That is one thing. Then coming to the health sector are already in the their surge phase. That they have already in their surge capacity. They have increased their bed capacity or the ventilator capacity or the oxygen capacity to the maximum. And once the cyclone is hit, first moving them out is one task. Another is if the patients, more patients are brought in from due to cyclone, there may not be places to accommodate the patients and even for the dead body. We may think it as a small thing, but respect to the dead bodies is one major thing we consider is important. If there are around 90 deaths in one particular place, there may not be even sufficient place to keep them and their dead bodies in the mortuary. So these kind of impacts are there due to the double disasters. Economic impact, again, we know the way migrant workers are going back, all the businesses, all the the secondary, tertiary level, all the business, everything will be disrupted. Also, in case of Kerala, there are lots of immigrant population who are now coming back from the abroad because they have lost their jobs or their visa expired, and this is going to have a long-term economic impact on Kerala and also India. So coming to the psychosocial impact, we all know children are the worst affected community right now because their education for the last 1 year, they were not going to school, and more than that, the exams are getting postponed regular, they don't know when it's going to happen. So it's going to have tremendous psychosocial impact on them. So these are things I can tell fast, and other things we can discuss during the panel discussion.
Sure,
so,
thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm not going into the way forward because I think there is another 3 minutes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
So, thank you. You have really pointed out the impact of the double disasters, and especially because you have also worked upon the implications of such disasters in the Nepal earthquake and upon the vulnerable population. So definitely your views are really insightful. So now we'll come to the academic assessment, and especially from someone who belongs to Odisha, which has been one of the badly hit states by YAS, Dr. Chandrasekhar Bahinipati sir. He's an assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh. And his major the research interests are on climate change economics, behavioral economics, natural resource management, and development economics. And in all these areas, he has published extensively in research journals like food security, land use policy, climate and development, and so on. And previously, he has carried out several research projects that have been sponsored by the ICSSR, Sandy Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research, International Institute of Environment and Development, GIZ India. And he is currently also involved in various projects related to climate change adaptation, household energy loss and damage assessment, COVID-19 sponsored COVID-19 sponsored by ICSSR for Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, OECD, etc. So it is very pertinent that your views are incorporated as we discuss this double disasters. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening to all the panelists so patiently. And I think you have enough room to speak to present your to make your remarks. Sir, over to you. Sir, please unmute, please.
Yeah, thank you, Simi. So am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you might be able to see the screen, or I have to make it full screen?
Yes, full screen, you can go full screen.
Yeah, so now it is fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you both NIDM as the IMPRI Impactful Policy Research Institute for inviting me for this webinar. So thanks to my previous speakers who basically talked about the impact of cyclone as well the COVID-19. So they're mostly focusing on how the cyclone is occurring and what could be the impact of the cyclone. So I would like to focus on the other side of it. That's basically the response to cyclone as well the COVID-19. Basically taking towards which basically untouched or unnoticed so far, the reflection on the learning effects as well the behavioral issues. So this could be the structure of my presentation. I'll take you to introduction, cyclone storms, then I could talk about the COVID-19 and behavioral issues and concluding remarks. So I've taken some part of the presentation from my recent work, which is basically ongoing with my two research students, basically Dinamani Biswal and the Mona Lisa Singh. So as you know that, yeah, of course we know that Odisha is the capital of disaster, but if you look at the natural disaster occurring in India, you see that climate-induced rapid and slow onset disasters are increasing. If you look at the frequency of the disasters are increasing over the years. And you look at the reported statistics basically given by the Disaster Management Authority or the Revenue and Disaster Management Department or the government agencies or the international agencies, basically you'll notice that few economic and non-economic loss and damages are reported. Still, we are not recognizing, there's many non-economic loss and damages are not reported, unnoticed. So that's here the question is that the figure we're getting at the end in terms of rupiah, either it could be lakh, billion or crore, but there is still underestimated figure because still we are not able to recognize or not able to notice or not able to report so many non-economic loss and damage indicators, even few economic indicators also. So given that limitation, if you look at that, okay, what could be the economic loss from the various natural disasters? So an economic loss is around $55.62 billion from natural disasters from 1964 to 2012, which could be on an average $1.2 billion per year. So if you look at over the years, what is happening? So 1970s was around 2.92 billion, but it's increased to 5.92 billion in 1980s, $18.41 billion in 1990s, and $23.74 billion in 2000. But flood and cyclone are the major disasters. Now we're talking more on the cyclone and flood and cyclone. But on the cyclone, if you look at the total amount of loss from the natural disasters, what could be the share of the cyclone? It could be 21%. But please remember that this could be much higher. Most often, recently, and of late, we are reporting the economic loss and damage figures. If you go back 1960s and 1970s and 1980s, most of the disasters, you'll find that the economic loss and damage figures are not reported. That could be the another reason that's why we are getting the less. Let me mention that in case of drought, you'll get a very less share because that's not reported. So if you look at the impact from the natural disaster, my right hand side, you'll see that there's an increasing trend from natural disaster as well as the cyclonic storms. Okay, it shows that, clearly shows that, yes, the impact from this economic impact from the cyclones are increasing over the years. But for me, the confusing and the surprising part of it, if you look at the figures, 3 figures in the down, which basically I have taken from the Odisha. Look at the first figure, the reported economic loss and damages, which is increasing. See, there is a kind of belief that suppose economic loss and damages are increasing. General belief that, okay, suppose there is a super cyclone, you'll get a more amount of loss and damage. Suppose there is a very less, suppose there is a depression or cyclone storm with less intensity, you'll have a less economic loss and damages. It shows that suppose the economic loss and damages are high, and means that intensity is high, intensity from that disaster is high. It is expected that we should lose more lives. But if you look at the middle second figure, the middle one, the ratio of lives lost reported to economic loss and damages is declining. It could be not surprising to me. So I was looking at that. So why it is happening? If you look at the third figure, the reported people affected is increased. It's not increasing. It's just not increasing significantly like the economic damage. I was looking at this. What is happening? We are able to protect our lives, not the livelihoods and infrastructure. That's basically convey the message that we are able to protect the lives because we are able to save the lives of the people, not the livelihood as the economic infrastructure. So that is happening in the state of Odisha, in addition to other states. That's why the government of Odisha is claiming for the last 4 or 5 disasters that is the no casualty. Okay, that's why they're able to success. They're able to best disaster manager in terms of reducing or in terms of reaching the level that 0 casualty. But what about the lives? What about the livelihoods and the economic loss and damages? These are basically infrastructure. Now they're looking at the livelihood as the economic loss and infrastructure, because now they're talking about the climate resilient infrastructure. Because this time the meeting happened, I think, last week with the Prime Minister. They're basically demanding that there should be a sea dike across the Odisha coast, as well as the protecting the infrastructure like the resilient electricity connection, registered infrastructure with respect to electricity. Now they're thinking about because they know that the best disaster manager in terms of saving the lives, not the infrastructure. Just now they're basically, I'm happy that now they're basically looking at how they can save or protect the infrastructure, making the climate resilient. So if you look at this, so some of the figures I brought from the Odisha also again. See, if you look at that, so where the first figure, which is the extreme left, which basically I look at the relationship between the to what extent you are vulnerable with respect to the poverty headcount ratio in the 2010-11 information. You'll see that if the poverty increases, okay, the vulnerability level also increases. Okay, if the poverty increases, the vulnerability level increases. If you go down the left-hand side, the down figure, you see that the relationship between vulnerability level and SDI calculation based on the 2011 data. You'll see that when SDI basically increases, the vulnerability level decreases. This shows that, this conveys the message that suppose you increase the income or the livelihood or the standard of living or the other indicators or the socioeconomic indicators in the particular district or particular village or the communities, so therefore they'll be less vulnerable. Apart from, so I'm talking about the reducing this impact on the infrastructure on the livelihood. So basically you have a better prediction, which basically tells that, okay, you can save the lives. But if you want to save the livelihood as the infrastructure, basically you have to improve the standard of living of the people and the other socioeconomic indicators. Those are basically could be a spillover effect for reducing the loss and damages. So while looking at the right hand side, 2 figures. So here basically I'm looking at the per capita net state domestic product with respect to the average of percentage of people affected. So this could be surprising to me. Again, the last figure, the right-hand side, which is basically talking about the per capita net domestic product at constant price, looking at the economic loss and damages. Looking at the state-wise figure, it shows me that with increasing the income, number of people are getting more affected, and with increasing the income, your economic loss and damages are increasing. Means, yes, that with increasing income, you're basically, which basically Mathew Koll was pointing out, Dr. Mathew Koll was pointing out that in Mumbai city, so because in 2050 we'll have more population, means that with increasing income, with because if you look at the coastal India, with increased the industrialization as the other socioeconomic indicators, more people are the density of population also increasing. As also in that place, in the vulnerable place, you have more economic infrastructure to lose. So that's why, as long as you are not making them as climate resilient, you are not making them as climate resilient, you are likely to lose, likely to see bigger number in terms of economic loss and damages as number of people affected. Okay, so now coming back to the learning effects, now coming back to the point which is basically raised by the Mathew Koll about the how you estimate the impact, you should think of the population. So what we have found here, there's two kinds of factors basically derive with loss and damages. One is the climatic factors, basically the intensity of loss and damage. Another factor is the socioeconomic loss and damages. So if you basically remove, basically that's paper I published in 2016, taking the information from Odisha, as published in Regional Environmental Change. Basically, if you look at that, removing the effects of climate change, okay, from the impact of figures, you'll see that results are it could be declining, or it could be not increasing. It seems that apart from the climatic factors, socioeconomic factors plays a major role. So that's why I still rated that we should think of the climate resilient infrastructure. As long as we don't think of that, whatever may be the information, whatever the IMD is doing best, providing the information or the exact prediction, it may help us to basically save our lives, not the livelihood and the infrastructure, not the economic infrastructure. And other points, which basically I point out in my two papers, which are published, basically talking about the learning effect, whether basically we learn from the previous disasters. Okay, because in the 1999 super cyclone, so we basically in Odisha, 10,000, we lost around 10,000 lives. But the cyclones happens in the, after the 99 cyclone, the last decade, the 3-4 cyclones, we're basically having the zero casualty, because people have learned. Because suppose now in the 99, it was very difficult to convince, maybe that kind of infrastructure was not there. And on the other hand, it's very difficult to convince the people that, okay, you should go to the safety place. Now, if you tell the people that, okay, you should go to the safety place, that now they're willing to move to the safety place or the cyclone shelters, but it was not possible. That so that's why we basically learn. That's evidence shows that we basically learn from the previous disasters. So that's the point is that from the cyclone point of view, looking at the way forward, which basically the government of Odisha is now talking about the climate resilient infrastructure. Now we should look at the climate resilient infrastructure to protect as livelihood as well as the economic infrastructure. So coming to the COVID-19. So let me not go back to that. Many people are already focused, talk about the COVID-19, because let me just give you some figure. The country started lockdown in March 24, 2020, when there's a first wave. Okay, the stringent lockdown. We have seen the lockdown for 2-3 months, the lockdown period in the first wave. Now still we're on, many states have already imposed lockdown in the second wave. So now my question is, whether lockdown or shutdown really helpful, really basically effective to reduce the number of infections? Could be. Because it's not possible to test it, because we don't have counterfactual information. As long as we don't have counterfactual information, we can't estimate the effectiveness. But looking at only the information we have, okay, what the number of infection when there is basically lockdown is imposed. Look at the figure in the left.
Chandra sir, can you hear me? Chandra sir, if you are able to hear me, you can just exit and then perhaps rejoin.
Sorry, it was disconnected for me.
Yes, yes, no issues. Yes, great.
I see. So how much time do I have?
Sir, another, say, 2-3 minutes. If that's okay.
Yeah, okay, I just finished it. So it is, I'm also showing the state-wise figures for the some of the most affected states, which are also showing the similar trend which are observed in case of India. So I was doing another research now with the IGS, looking at the number of confirmed cases in Bhubaneswar city as well the Cuttack in Odisha. You'll see that in the first wave, it was again increased and declined. Now in the second wave, still in the increasing trend because I have updated up to May 16, 2021. Just collected the information from June 8, 2020. So now my question is, I'm focusing on the behavioral issues. Okay, the two issues I'm focusing on, one is the migrant laborers, because you know that when there's a first wave started, there's a chaos in the Delhi, Mumbai, Surat, and many places. The migrant workers want to back to their home state. Why it happened? Okay, the first one is there are many other issues. Okay, I'm not denying that, but I'm just focusing on what could be the issues from the behavioral point of view. One is the base rate neglect. Because as you, that time, if you look at the number of people infected, the percentage of number of people infected, which could be very low, because based on the figures from China or other European countries, it could be very low. But when you make a decision, because people are not making the decision based on the probability of being infected or probability being died because of the COVID-19. And then send the herd behavior, it's a group behavior. Suppose a group of people wants to back to their home state, then other people, you think that, okay, that other group of people are planning to back to their home state or home village, so I'll also move, because they also believe that, yes, they might not be doing the wrong decision, let me follow them. And similar things happening, the herd behavior is basically happening in case of vaccination. Because why the most of the people in the rural India are not interested to take vaccination? Because they're looking at the other people, what they're doing. They're looking at, okay, that most of the people are not interested to take vaccine. So that's why they're following them. Okay, I'll also not take it. That's basically, so whatever the top-down approach here that government is providing the vaccination and vaccination to telling that people who come the vaccination, do the vaccine, as long as we are not addressing these behavioral issues, I don't think we can able to achieve the 100% vaccination. Then is the anchoring and reference point. Basically, people look at the anchoring and reference point and the availability bias. People look at the information is provided to them, immediate information. When they look at that, during the first wave, you look at that, there's always 24/7 talk in the media, online media, social media about the COVID-19, something social stigma to them. That kind of information that, okay, motivate them to basically make a chaos in the Delhi. So second thing, that why people are not following the social distancing or physical distancing. Because if you look at that number of, because I'm monitoring now in Odisha, all the districts under the municipality corporation like Bhubaneswar and Cuttack. So I found that every day, most number of people are basically fined because of not observing social distancing and physical distancing. Why? The last 1 year, we have been talking that, okay, there is a COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19, they observe that, they realize that, but still they're not following that. One is that high discount rate, basically how people discount the benefits of the future. Suppose you obey the physical distancing, basically you realize the benefit tomorrow or day after tomorrow, or down the line 1 month or 2 months. Basically, always people are giving the high discount towards the sooner reward rather than over the larger ones in the future. The reward is that because I'll go to the market, I'll go to my friend, and that kind of pleasure and that kind of utility I get to going to the market or going to meet my friends, have a party with my friends. So basically, that kind of utility I get, which is I give more weight to that rather than a benefit I could get because of the social distancing. Okay, and sometimes people are basically optimistic about their health. They believe that, okay, nothing will happen. Suppose I went out, so nothing happened. I just went out, and after 15 days I realized nothing had happened. Then I believe that, okay, nothing is happening to me. and overconfidence bias. Some people will say nothing will happen to me because there is a statistics tell that around 85% don't need medical admission, or some 0.1% people are died because of that 0. Some people that. So nothing will happen. That's overconfidence bias. Okay, and there could be a status quo bias. Basically, status quo bias tells us that basically some festivals, some rituals. Okay, so he's basically people try to obey that, because now I've seen that some festivals are coming in Odisha, so people are basically going out to purchase the commodities, because that's basically the status quo. They basically don't want to deviate from that status quo. They want to follow that rituals. Okay, in marriage, okay, the most of the marriage cases, most of the funerals, you'll see that they're basically violating the social basically norms. Why? That's the status quo bias. They don't want to violate that. So this could be the concluding remarks, which basically I have already discussed. So given the short time, I'll just end it here. Thank you, Simi, Mother.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful analysis of loss and damage figures that you have provided. So I will not take more time. So we'll quickly go to the next round, wherein there are a few questions, and if please feel free to reflect on the remarks made by other panelists also, if you feel so. And to begin with the way forward round, I would also pitch in a few questions that I feel are quite relevant to, and then you can merge it with the way forward. So Sunita ma'am, how important it is, or how do you see international cooperation in your area of work in ensuring that there is better warning systems in place, and if it is there, and how is India helping out to its neighboring countries, especially maybe Maldives, Sri Lanka, which are already low-lying areas. So if you could talk about that, and also some of the way forward that you think is important. Sunita ma'am. Ma'am, can you unmute if you're able to hear me? Okay, so never mind. I think ma'am is trying to reconnect. Arjun, if you could check with ma'am. And yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
I can give a little bit of additional information on that, not specifically on how we can provide. I think you were talking about how we can provide forecasts and everything for South Asian countries, especially since IMD is focusing on the Northern Indian Ocean region, right, as the major forecasting agency. And I think that's an important way forward, because we have excellent forecasting facilities which provides local information which can be helpful for all the South Asian countries in the Indian Ocean rim, and this can be used by other countries like Bangladesh, Myanmar, and all, where cyclones, or Pakistan, where cyclones or extreme weather events manifest. But there is more important international cooperation required that I want to talk about. So whether it is monitoring or forecasting, it is quite important that we need importantly we need observations, because observations over the ocean, land, and the air in the atmosphere, which are data that is fed to these climate or weather models for their forecast. So without these observations in the ocean and land, we cannot have this forecast. So the accuracy of this forecast very well depend on the monitoring as well. But we have gaps over there. For example, if you want to forecast the monsoon or the cyclone, we need very high resolution data over the Indian Ocean. We call it the Indian Ocean Observing System. And there are many sustained observing systems in the Indian Ocean. And half of this is funded by the US. About 20-25% is supported by India. and other countries like China, Japan, Korea, and neighboring countries are also part of it, which means international collaboration and cooperation is quite important. But these funds are flattening while the operational costs are increasing. And there are many gaps, and COVID has made some challenges there also. Some of these observations, monitoring systems in the Indian Ocean, which are quite essential for cyclones and monsoon, got stopped working during the last several months or were damaged. Yeah, when sometimes cyclone comes and they damage the systems. There was a observing platform called a mooring in the Bay of Bengal when one of which recorded very high ocean temperatures, which are again going into the monitoring and forecasting system. This also stopped working. Yeah, and because of COVID, the agencies were not able to service these instruments at the right time, and we have many gaps because of those challenges as well. And there are many other gaps also which I'm not getting into. So we need to improve our monitoring system so that we have better forecasting and also better understanding of how these extreme events work on. And also there is an important aspect here which is connected to our coastal or exclusive economic zone. So the data over there is not public, yeah, even the scientific hydrological data, yeah, which should be public in my opinion, so that global agencies and Indian agencies can use this for monitoring how the weather systems work, how extreme events like cyclones work along the coastal and economic zones. And this requires regional partnership from India and other neighboring countries very much, right? And so that is one thing we have to work on with regional partnership and strategies. Yeah, but I think Sunita is here, so she can give more.
Yes, so just to add to your views on your point on EEZ, there is a lot of deep sea drilling and mining that is going on, and then you had connected with the oceanic warming. So do you think that this is also a contributor to the climate change implications, as you were saying, the 40-year period, and will this have any impacts?
Well, not directly. Deep sea drilling will not directly impact climate change immediately in terms of temperatures and all. But there is one thing, yeah, because this a lot of carbon is absorbed by the ocean, yeah, and these are absorbed by microscopic plants called phytoplankton, yeah, and these phytoplankton, when they fade off, when they die, they settle as debris in the sediments in the ocean floor. And that is one way the carbon is absorbed by the oceans. So when we disturb, without studying, without understanding, okay, these are thousands and millions of years of carbon in the bottom of the ocean that is stored. So in time, in long term, this can be a disturbance if you don't do it wisely. And also there are many organisms and marine creatures living out there which are dependent on that bottom flora. So we need more information, more studies on that when we are going for the drilling also.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sunita ma'am.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, that's okay. You were on a telephone call, no problem, ma'am. So, ma'am, if you could talk about the way forward on how to strengthen the forecasting and also coordination aspects, so that we reduce the impacts of such natural disasters. If you could talk about that, and also, do you? I'm just curious to know whether the cloud bursts that happen, are they also, can you also forecast it, or is there any way so that the disasters that it leads to are also minimized?
Yeah. First of all, regarding improving the cyclone forecast, we need more and more observations within the cyclone, in fact. If that is not available, that is the what we'll call the aircraft reconnaissance flights. If we are able to do that, perform that sort of observations from the core from the wall cloud region at least of the cyclone, then that would add to our modeling capability and enhance the understanding of physics. Then only we can improve our forecasting of cyclones. Otherwise, we have come to a plateau type of state now. Whatever we have achieved so far, without this sort of reconnaissance flights, it may be difficult to improve further. So that is the first one. Then about the cloudburst thing you are asking, it is a very difficult situation to predict in much in advance. Nowcast mode, we can go ahead. We have installed several Doppler weather radars over the hilly terrain, mainly that is happening over Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, that sort of regions. There, with the help of radars and rapid refresh cycle of modeling, which is at present we have taken up, that sort of thing, radar data getting ingested into the models, we may be able to in future, within the nowcast range, it will be possible. Otherwise, it is a difficult thing. But thing is that we need resilient sort of resilience building. That is the essential part of it. Forecast, there is a limit to go for how much ever we are forecasting. We are unable to prevent the property loss and structural damage. So that is where the resilience building comes into play. There we need to give our emphasize our focus now.
Ma'am, so you talked about the aircraft reconnaissance flights. We need. So why haven't, I mean, that is another discussion altogether, but are there best practices around the world from where we can learn, and also how, I mean, why are we not able to move towards this? What is stopping us?
There had been plans for aircraft. This needs first of all, it requires a very highly, very strong sort of aircraft. It is not just going into cyclones. IITM used to do that cloud physics experiments, that KIPEX named experiments. They used to go into the cumulonimbus clouds. But cyclone is such a system that it is a agglomeration of several such clouds, and lot of this turbulent motion is taking place in that. So we need such a stubborn aircraft to do this observation. And for that purpose, there had been planned earlier, but somehow it did not materialize. Very long back, there had been some observations taken place. That is quite a long time back. But there, world over, Atlantic and Pacific, they are conducting such experiments. So there is some improvement also has taken place based on that. Otherwise, we are data sparse over the oceanic area mainly, other than certain data buoys and ships and all. When the system is developing, we'll ask them to move out of the area. Whatever data buoys are there, that will be giving the sea condition, sea surface temperature, air temperature, that much only. We need a vertical data also. Some satellites are providing us the data. So, but that there is a limit for it to, means some validation is required for these satellite data. Satellites are helping us, but this is the essential part.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So now I'll move to Dr. Sreeja. In fact, there is a question by Mr. Praveen Mathew from the audience. In Kerala, recent day cyclones has calmed, and the destruction of the houses are there. It is due to the fact that there is no standard barriers. How can we strengthen the lives of the people who live near the sea? And if I can club it with what the kind of disaster preparedness that you were saying, we need to have, I believe, more foot soldiers in times of such disaster management when these disasters occur. But how do we deal with them in the peacetime when there is no such disasters? Do we have a plan A, plan B? And because we need so many people right there at the time, is there anything to train them, voluntary basis or anything? So if you can share your views on that, Dr. Sreeja.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So regarding the barrier, already Sir has mentioned about the, initially we were thinking about if we were putting stones, boulders near the coastal line, we can prevent the coastal erosion or the storm surge. Initially, we were thinking, but now the recent studies have shown that there's no point in just depositing the boulders there, rather than it's just a waste of money. But now, because we are seeing the example of Mumbai and all, we are trying to incorporate. This is what is actually happening and right now. That is, we are trying to put the tripod near the coastal line so that it will act as a barrier. But we also prefer the natural barrier. We are checking with the whether it is suitable. It's not suitable to have mangroves all over the coastal line in Kerala. Towards the northern part of Kerala, of course, there are few mangroves there. But when you come to the southern Kerala, there are no much mangroves as such. Again, in near the central Kerala, near to Cochin, there are few mangroves, but again, it is not. That area is we have not yet checked its option whether we can grow mangroves and prevent the storm surge. But during tsunami, some suggestions were there that because the southern part of Kerala was much impacted with the tsunami, but the central part, that is Ernakulam, that region was not much impacted because there is a mangrove region there. It's some I'm not very sure whether that is the reason, but yeah, we are still checking the options, and the new government is checking for the tripod thing. So that is, that is the that's what we are currently checking. So regarding the foot soldiers, we have this. Related to the fire and safety department, we have the civil defense volunteers that is there for a long time, but recently around 2 years back, I'm not very sure about the year, 2 years back, we have this civil defense volunteers. We started to train them more and give them some incentives, because they're all volunteers. They are not being paid, like they are not getting much remuneration. So they are paid, and they will be engaging in their own work during their normal time, and during disasters they will be pulled for this work, rescue relief operations, but otherwise they will be engaging in their own work. Similarly, there is I think NDMA has this project called Abda Mitra, which is currently there in a few states in India. In Kerala, it is right now in one district. So they are also same to civil defense volunteers. They will be engaging in their own work, and during emergencies, we will pull them for emergency work. So that is.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. That was great information. So, Sir Chandra, sir, so as all of us in the panel, and even Major General Bindal also mentioned about the cascading disasters, which will keep happening, and the projections also indicate that climate-related disasters are likely to become more and more frequent and intense. What, according to you, are the approaches that emerging economies like India, having a huge rural and poor population base, should take?
So I have a suggestion here. Basically, given the more people are living in the coastal areas, basically the rural people, so we should now think of the alternative livelihood options, because most of them are depending on the agriculture. Every year, either they are facing a cyclone or a flood or a basically heavy rainfall. Okay, because that's why they're basically losing the agricultural crops, which have negative impact on the livelihood also every year. So now we should think of that, okay, how we can create an alternative livelihood for them, and also providing the information much earlier, because the farmers, in case of farmers, they should think of that alternative crops, because now we know that the month of October, now the last two cyclones, if you observe, it's coming in the month of May. Okay, earlier you see that the cyclones are coming in the month of October, which is basically the harvesting season. So now, given the occurrence of the cyclonic patterns, now we have to think of the agriculture department or the government agency has to think of that how they can communicate to the farmer, the rural households, that okay, you should cultivate the crops, the short-term crops, so that you could harvest the crops before the cyclone land, because we know that the cyclone pattern that okay, it comes either in May or the October, we should cultivate in between. The second thing that we should also think of the building the climate resilient infrastructure. So as long as we're not building the climate resilient infrastructure, otherwise you could, because the third thing I would like to point out here, we should think of including the climate change in the development planning, because you have a planning department in every state. You have a climate change department. They are going parallelly, because you have a human development report or the economic survey, development planning reports. And on the other hand, you have state action plan on climate change, which is basically prepared by the other department. They are going basically parallel, as long as you don't merge them. Okay, so the development department, the planning department should think of the climate change, because when they invest or do some investment on some infrastructure, they should think of the climate change also. That's why it could be climate resilient infrastructure. The one thing I'd like to point out, if you look at the human development report of all states, okay, although most of the states are basically facing the disaster, and disaster could have significant impact on the human development, except the Odisha. You will not find any state that is a chapter for disaster. Okay, except the Odisha. Although all the states, most of the states are experiencing the natural disaster, although the 2007 Human Development Report, the International Human Development Report basically recognized climate change, but still now, none of the states are basically putting a chapter that's basically disaster chapter, except the Odisha. So as long as the planning department or the development policy thinkers is not recognizing the climate change, so I don't think they'll go parallelly and they'll investment parallelly, and we'll end up with a maladaptation. That's why the economic loss and damage is increasing.
Right, sir. Right. So thank you so much for your responses. And just quickly, because we are really over the time, if I can go to each of the panelists and ask for one or maximum of 2 policy recommendations that you have, which will help us reduce the losses of lives and all sorts of associated losses from disasters like cyclones. So if I may start with Sunita ma'am.
Yeah, regarding policy decision, I need to say building disaster resilience. That is the major policy decision. And we need to be prepared for more frequent and more intense cyclones. And not just the expected areas like Odisha, West Bengal, they are more prone. Tamil Nadu also prone along the East Coast, Andhra Pradesh. Not just along the East Coast, West Coast also we need to be getting ready. That is the major point I want to state here.
I think yeah, we need to roll up the sleeves. Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Roxy, over to you.
Yeah, Simi. So regarding policies and all, if we are working on a futuristic way on how climate change is unraveling across not only the coastline of India but also the neighboring countries, we need to work on data sharing along the coastline, in the exclusive economic zone included, hydrographic scientific data. There is, I mean, many of this data is available from satellite also. So there shouldn't be any problem for data collected from in situ platforms in the coastal region. Yeah, and with that data and future data that our climate change projections show, it is quite possible to prepare a coastal risk assessment. So we need to do that coastal risk assessment for the entire coast. And for all this, not only for the data sharing and also for the risk assessment, we need data sharing policies between departments of the country and also in neighboring countries as well. So that can work fantastically. I see that even from a research point of view, many times it is quite hard for us to get even publicly funded data. Like, for example, data from water department or data from other agencies. So these data should be in the public forum so that researchers, scientists, government, administration, everyone can use. Because like what we saw in all these talks here, many of these things are working together. Nature is working together. And if something like COVID also comes, it is multiplying that thread, right? So we need data sharing policy.
Right, sir. Very important point. Thank you so much. Sreeja ma'am, your views?
So, one thing I always, because I'm working in the disaster management sector, I have seen that there is no enough fund for meeting the needs of the health sector. So if a particular percentage of the GDP should be like minimum 6%, if it is kept towards health sector, then that would be a big investment, and it will bring big changes in the actual risk itself. Second thing is that, again, sir has said about it, the data sharing. Data, not only data sharing, but data management. It is most of the time, the data will be available with one particular department, but they will never share it with the department which is in the next building. So that is one problem which we are facing. But one thing we have done in Kerala is that we have given this government order that the data which is available with the state government, any department in the state should be shared free of cost to the disaster management authority. But it should not be just to the disaster management authority, but to all the other departments also, and also to other stakeholders also. So that should be there. So that's what I.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, that appropriation of GDP is really important, and that will help us roll up the sleeves for what Sunita ma'am was saying. Thank you. Yes, Chandra sir, over to you.
I'd like to again reiterate that. So we should think of like integrating climate change in the development policy planning. So otherwise, we'll end up with a maladaptation. As long as the development policy planning, the agriculture department, other department, because I would like to reiterate the points raised by the both Roxy, Mathew, Koll as the Sreeja. So basically the coordination between the departments. So since the climate change has a spillover impacts on the many other sensitive sectors, those sensitive sectors should coordinate with the climate change department, and also think of that, okay, because there's two kinds of things. One is the development kind of risk, another the climate risk. Because the development department, other departments, they're trying to address the development kind of risk. But they should think of that in addition to development risk, there's a climate risk. So they should coordinate with the climate risk department and see that, so the next investment should be the climate resilient, so that will not end up with the maladaptation and will not end up with a more loss and damage.
That's right. That's right. So yes, we are all on the same page, and thank you so much for your responses. I would now like to request if Anil Gupta sir would like to conclude, and then we will just end with the vote of thanks. Anil sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to all the speakers. In fact, very important points have emerged, and I think all three speakers brought out their important point of view. Sreeja is a hazard analyst, and her focus on data, I think that she always touches upon these issues. And Dr. Bahinipati, he has been deep into trying to find out two things. One is the methodological dimensions, and beside this, that how do we integrate? Actually, in India, past more than 10 years, or even 13, 14 years, journey since 2007, this integrating climate change issues with the developmental planning has been there, but in a piecemeal kind of things. We had good pilots, but now it is required that from pilots we rise to both upscaling, downscaling, and also multiplication, because we have more than 700 districts. And how to integrate this with the district level plan, I think that is going to be very important. Some of the states have taken initiative in coming up with village level plans also, which they try to integrate climate resilience. But only thing that when we try to develop a taluka level or village level plan, then downscaling of climate information is again a very important challenge. So with recognizing that lack of data, recognizing that deficit in the data, also something can be done. We should agree that it is not that if we do not have downscaled projection for district level or village level, we cannot do anything. Then also, because climate change is about uncertainties, how do we address uncertainties? I think that is very important thing. So coming to a wide range, no? So for the same time preparing for drought and floods, same time preparing for the cyclone also. And that is the reason the shift from single hazard to multi-hazard. And basically here also we are discussing that how during one disaster we had to face other disasters also. So these are important lessons. And as Dr. Roxy also given a very important, even some of the examples also, which are very thought provoking, that we sometimes we have some background information, but how to use it wisely and simpler approaches. Sometimes even many times we talk about the very complex kind of models, complex kind of approaches. Sometimes even simpler models can also work. Like I recall that some studies we had promoted, and it was 2010 to 13, that how to use simple rainfall data, maybe 30 years, 40 years rainfall data at the district level, and simple data, and using the Excel, Microsoft Excel. Then also we can do some kind of projections, some kind of trends we can develop, and we can say that whether the extreme rainfall events have increased or not increased, and whether the periodicity or whether the timings, maybe the extreme rainfall took place in particular time, particular month, now it is shifted 15 days before, 15 days later. So these kind of possibilities are there. And NIDM has developed a handbook also on disaster statistics and database. I think there are good examples, and that can also be of use to some of the readers. I find that today's deliberation, almost we started at 11 o'clock, and this is
1:30.
Yeah, 1:30, and very detailed discussion. I think it was very detailed, and very good examples have come, very good thoughts have come. We'll discuss, Dr. Simi, that how can we come out with some kind of a key points. We note the key points, and then because that should not remain within this panel discussion only. It should be effectively communicated to people who are into helm of affairs. And certainly we are here, but the people in the state governments, people in various ministries, as there were a lot of emphasis on integrating climate change adaptation, disaster resilience into sectoral plans. So before I end my closing remarks, just to inform you that with a comprehensive exercise of working with multi-sectoral approach, now we are trying to promote that each and every ministry of Government of India should come up with a disaster management plan, where we integrate disaster climate resilience also, and also to see that how it addresses SDGs. And the first plan that we have prepared, and that is approved by the NDMA chaired by Honorable Prime Minister, that is the National Agriculture Disaster Management Plan. So that is first kind of a model that we have developed. Now we are helping Ministry of Environment and Forests. The work is already going on. And the third ministry which has come forward, and where now we started, is the Department of Chemicals and Petrochemicals. So there also now, because if in general, if you talk to chemicals and petrochemicals, no one will think that it has some kind of relationship with climate change. But increasing incidences of fire during summers in these kind of industries, increasing evaporations, and then a requirement of changing their safety thresholds. Here are some examples, even how climate change can affect industries also. Our climate change can also call for more requirement of fuels for cooling, heating, both. So there are so many dimensions. So currently we are trying to promote this, and today's deliberation has really been a very thought-provoking contribution to this. So thanks from my side to all the panelists of the day, and to the entire team of IMPRI and NIDM, and greetings to you and Dr. Arjun, and over to you, Dr. Simi.
Thank you so much, sir. Very important points you have raised towards the end also, and definitely the key recommendations and key points we will be sharing. We will be coming out with it, and we will be sharing with everybody, because I totally resonate your views that communication is the key, not just to the people who are intellectually sound, but also to the common people as well. So thank you so much. This was this panel discussion was our humble attempt actually to bring a convergence of the scientists and the social scientists, and also sciences and social sciences, and ultimately bring about insights that would translate into the welfare and well-being of the people, because it is ultimately the people who are affected by the natural disasters. So I am sure all of you had a great intellectually stimulating session, and so is the same with the attendees, not just watching here on Facebook, not just here on Zoom, but also on Facebook Live, and those will be watching it later on YouTube. So thank you so much. Now I would like to formally propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development at IMPRI and NIDM, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, on behalf of our patron, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir. Thank you for your keynote address. It really set the motion rolling. And also our convener, Professor Anil Gupta, sir, your views are always so enriching. And our eminent and distinguished panelists, the program would not be as intellectually stimulating as it has been without you. Dr. Sreeja Unni, ma'am, Dr. Chandra sir, Dr. Chandrasekhar Bahinipati sir, Dr. Roxy Mathew, Koll sir, thank you so much for your discussion points, and also Mrs. Sunita Devi, ma'am, thank you so much. And also the coordinators, Fatima and Fatima from NIDM, Ritika and Anshula from our team, and also Sunidhi from our team. So thank you so much. And I wish all of us that we roll up our sleeves for more such disasters, but with better preparedness and more resilience. Thank you so much. I wish you all a very good day, and God bless. Bye-bye.
Thanks, me.
Bye. 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 Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.